wonderful people out there in the dark. Thank you again so much for checking in. I wanted to talk a little bit about secret societies, at least a few of them, and how not secret they really are. Because let's face facts, the fact that we're aware of them means they're not secret. I mean, isn't the entire point of a secret is to know a thing and not share it with anyone? So if you're in a secret society, you can't talk about the society, otherwise it's not a secret. Now, I acknowledge that makes it tough to get members, because if no one's aware that there's a society, it's hard to get a group of people with like-minded ideas together. Kind of like the problem with Fight Club, right? The first rule of Fight Club is you don't talk about Fight Club. So if you don't talk about Fight Club, how can there be a club? But I digress. So let's go all the way back to about 1090 to about 1275 AD and the Hashashians. Take a look. Here's their, or at least their known logo. So the Hashashians, they were a sect of the Shia Muslims. And in the early days, they hung out in the mountains of Persia and Syria. Now, what they were basically set up to do was kill Muslims who they decided were enemies of the state, and eventually Christians when the Crusades started. And Hashashian is actually, it's believed to be, that's where the modern word assassination or assassins come from, because these cats were so talented that their tactics became legendary, and that's still used today. Infiltrating organizations, being part of the process for months, maybe years before they would actually kill you. At their peak, their command outposts were Altamont and Lamsar Castle, both now are in modern day Iran. I think Lamsar Castle is actually pretty close to the Caspian Sea. They were so popular, there's rumors that even King Richard Lionheart had hired these cats to whack somebody that he wasn't happy with. And again, like I said, they basically infiltrated organizations. You'd think they were your friend, turns out they weren't. Next minute, you're your buddies, and the next minute they'd cut your throat, and that's that. But what I thought was most interesting is that Hashashians became assassins, which still exist today, and I suppose on some level, I don't know any assassins, so I suppose they are secret, a secret society. Now, their power had waned by about 1275, and I think for the most part they were sort of disbanded, because one thing always takes over another, I suppose. But now let's move into about 1119, and the group known as the Poor Fellow Soldier of Christ and the Temple of Solomon. You would know them better as the Knights Templar. Take a look. Here's one of their logos. Now they sort of came into being after the First Crusade. The Franks basically captured Jerusalem, and for those of you who don't know, the Franks were the Germans. So once again, we've got the Germans invading someplace and taking over. What, they sacked Rome, now we've got them sacking Jerusalem, and not too long after this, they tried to take over the world a couple of times. But anyway, the First Crusade, the Franks, they captured Jerusalem from the Muslims. And the Christians from what today would be modern Germany, they're looking for security to make pilgrimages, to the Holy Land, essentially. And the Knights Templar are sort of set up on some level for that. There's not necessarily a problem in, obviously, Jerusalem, because the Christians at that time controlled it, but outside of that town, a lot of bandits, a lot of problems. So the Knights Templar sort of set up to be a group of fighters to protect innocent people making a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. Now, the interesting thing is, the Templars set up shop on Temple Mount, in about 1120. And that's actually believed to be where some of the rumors that the Ark of the Covenant and the Holy Grail were once kept. And we've all read the books and seen the movies that the Templars are somehow keepers of the Holy Grail and the Ark of the Covenant. Little side note. But in 1139, Pope Innocent, all the Knights Templars, they all took an oath of poverty, and they're given control because of that of a lot of the church's wealth. So much so that in 1139, Pope Innocent, which isn't the best name for a pope, by the way, Pope Hilarious. If I was going to be a pope, I would give myself the name Pope Hilarious, because I think that's hilarious. But anyway, Pope Innocent issues a papal bull exempting all the Knights Templar from taxes. And the Knight Templars actually also are excellent bookkeepers, collecting taxes, protecting merchants as well as people making pilgrimages. And they actually develop a lot of banking ideas and financial networks across Europe at that time. And a lot of it are techniques that we still use today. Now, with all things, they started losing some of their crusades. They won the first couple, but the Muslims sort of get their act together. And they start kicking the Christians' asses. And eventually the Knights lose Temple Mount. And actually at one point, they even own the island of Cyprus, the Knights Templar, for a long time. But the Crusades stopped going the way of the Christians, and as with anything, their influence continues to grow, and eventually the church turns against the Knights Templar. And on October the 13th, Friday, October the 13th, 1307, which is where a lot of people believe the Friday the 13th superstitions come from, King Philip the Fourth ordered the Démolay, which basically they started gathering up these Templars and killing them, torturing them, setting them on fire, forcing them into false confession, so on and so forth. And a lot of them basically go into hiding. And as I mentioned earlier, they're sort of famous for knowing the location of the Holy Grail and the Ark. And they had a hierarchy that was sort of carried over into the Freemasons, several levels of Templar, the most powerful and the most knowledgeable being the Grand Master. But as I showed you here only a moment ago, take a look again. Here's their logo. That's the Cross of Lorraine. Now the Cross of Lorraine, as you can see, it's a double bar cross. And that actually originally started, really probably the Byzantine Empire, and it was adopted by the Kingdom of Hungary. This gal, Bela III, was sort of the first monarch that at least references are known to talk about this double bar cross. And really what it is, it's just a variant of the Latin cross. You can see in the Latin cross is the cross that Christ was, crucified on. Your lower bar is obviously much longer, representing this, and that top shorter bar sort of represents, again, on the Latin cross, there's a piece of wood that has the letters INRI, which is Latin for Jesus the Nazarene King of Jews. And I'm not sure the I, N, and R-I, I don't know Latin, so I won't try to share that with you. But what's interesting is this double cross exists all over the place. You don't even recognize it. For example, it appears on Exxon. It appears in the Nabisco logo. It appears on Oreos. It's in the movie Casablanca. It's even in the television series Magnum P.I. Take a look. Take a look right now. Isn't that amazing? There it is. Even to this day, the double cross still exists. And many people believe that the Knights Templar, when they went into hiding, they still exist. They are still caretakers of the Ark and caretakers of the Holy Grail, the Da Vinci Code, and countless movies and books, wonderful books, talk about it. And really, I believe they're basically the beginning of the Freemasons, which we'll get to here in just a moment. But 1614 to 1617, along comes this group called the Rosie Crew, Sanatorium, Rosicrucianism. Rosie Crucianism. And it was basically this sort of esoteric order that they have, also known as the Order of the Rosy Cross. Here, take a look. Here's a logo, what we believe it to be. Interesting, right? They're basically a secret brotherhood of alchemists, is what it boils down to. And they're trying to focus more on scientific answers as opposed to religious answers. And this is 1614, 1617. And at that time, the Red Cross is mentioned in literature of the time, in poems and certain stories. And a lot of people believe it's the start. It's the start of the Invisible College, which is the precursor to the Royal Society of London, which started in about 1660. And we all know the Royal Society of London came about or created on improving natural knowledge. Again, that same concept of trying to understand the world that we live in, not so much through religious answers, but actual natural philosophy, questioning all the doctrines of the church, the Royal Society, the Invisible College, and this Rosie Crucianism. I think I'm saying that right. Anyway, we move forward a little bit to about 1887 and the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Now, I drop off the Hermetic Order. The Golden Dawn, I think we've all sort of heard of in movies on various things. But in 1887, it's basically a cult. This cat, William Woodman, his buddy William Westcott, and Samuel Mathers, all Freemasons, had decided to sort of break away from the Freemasons because, again, they're really locked into this esoteric philosophy. And they're really buying into astrology, tarot divination, which is basically tarot cards. Take a look. Here's some tarot cards. So we've got astrology, tarot divination, and this thing called geomancy, which is really wackadoodle. Essentially, it's reading rocks or markings on the ground, and they kind of had these dice that they would read. We'll take a look. Here's some of it. Right, so they're really getting very esoteric and really out into the weeds, far away from the Freemasons or the Templars, especially that the geomancy, the reading of the rocks, which to me is kind of interesting because, the Mormons, what's his name, is reading a bag of rocks in the bag, and that's the foundation of their religion. But of course, a lot of it is based on alchemy, chemistry, and just really kind of off the wall stuff. Their most famous member is probably the poet William Yeats. Terrific poet, by the way, but obviously he's a bit of a wackadoodle since he was supposedly a member of this Golden Dawn. So next up would be, it's called the Ordo Templi Orientis. And this was started in the early 1900s. Now this is a full-on occult. Check this cat out. Look at this dude. His name is Alistair Crawley. Now tell me he's not a wackadoodle. Now he died in 1947, but same concept. They were tied somewhat to the Masons, but they wanted to explain the universe through various rituals, sort of discover yourself through, I would probably think, drugs at the time, but clearly whacked out of their skulls. Again, a secret society, not too terribly secret because everybody knew about them. But in the end, I think this Crawley guy was trying to pull members from the Freemasons, who I haven't talked about yet, but was somewhat unsuccessful because I think at the end, rituals and some of the wackadoodle things he's doing, even the hat he's wearing, kind of steer people away. Interestingly enough, some of its original foundings go back to this guy named Karl Kellner. It's Karl with a K, which means he was German. Shocker. But I just thought it was kind of interesting, that group as a whole. So let's, before we get to the Freemasons, the Skull and Bones. You all have heard of the Skull and Bones. This is 1882. Take a look. Here's their logo. They're known as the Bonesmen, Yale University. It's not, you can't really call it a secret, again, secret society. These cats actually published their membership, their members for years and years and years. I forget which year they stopped doing it. But it was quite a while. They would just list the names. Now, they're also known, but beyond the Skull and Bones, as the Order, or the Order 322 you saw on that logo. And what 322 is referencing is it's the year some Greek cat named Desmothenius killed himself, and he was an Athenian, and I think people were coming to arrest him. This is kind of the collapse of Greece, I think, and sort of they're going to establish a plutocratic system as opposed to a democracy. And this Desmos Theseus, he's a great orator and talker, and for some reason these Skull and Bone cats really dig this guy. But the Skull and Bones, funny thing, also known as the Brotherhood of Death. To be honest with you, this is a bunch of nerds, because the original, the whole group was founded after a dispute among the debating societies, a bunch of debaters. The Brothers in Unity and the Callippian Society, and I think the Linonia, like 3 debate teams, they all got in a twist over some Phi Beta Kappa award. I mean, you're talking about a bunch of rich kids and uber nerds. And what do uber nerds do? Skull and bones to make themselves seem, scary. But the hall is even known as a tomb. But some of the famous cats that have been involved, William Howard Taft, the president, and he was also a Chief Justice of the United States. As you probably know, both presidents, both the Bushes, Herbert Walker and George Bush were both part of the Skull and Bones Society. John Kerry, Frederick Smith, who was the founder of FedEx, he went to Yale University and was a Skull and Bones guy. And really interesting, this cat named James Angleton. Now, this is where it kind of gets interesting, because James Angleton is considered the mother, I don't know if they don't call him the father, but he's considered the mother of the Central Intelligence Agency, which Bush Sr. was head of at one time. And a lot of people think that the Skull and Bones Society, a lot of the cats that they're tied to it, actually end up in the CIA, and that's maybe an extension of the Skull and Bones group. That seems like superstitious nonsense to me, quite frankly, because again, I go back to, first off, Yale University, it's a bunch of rich kids, and the fact that it's founded on a bunch of debate team nerds worrying about some stupid Kappa award. Come on, it's ridiculous. But let's talk about a little bit about the Freemasons, or Freemasonry, founded about the 1300s, because it sort of references a lot of these things. A lot of people believe it came from the stonemasons, and actually 13 of the 39 signers of the Constitution were actually Freemasons. There's 3 grades of Freemasons that we're aware of anyway: apprentice, journeyman, and master. And as I mentioned earlier, I believe a lot of that comes from the Knights Templar. They had 3 levels as well, especially that master. And it's used today in a lot of trades, electrical trades. There's obviously apprentice and journeymans and masters. The society itself has lodges instead of temples. I've actually been to one in Iowa. They're beautiful. The Masonic temples are beautiful, but they're full of rituals and full of symbols. I myself would join the Freemasons. My problem is the first thing you have to do is acknowledge that there's a deity or a superior being, which I cannot do being an atheist, but some very, very famous Freemasons. Again, how can it be a secret society? Sorry, too much wine, I'm talking too fast. Ben Franklin, Buzz Aldrin, Davy Crockett, Richard Pryor, Don Rickles, Henry Ford, Truman, John Wayne, just to name a few. There were countless others. And many books written about the Freemasons, which are kind of, I think there's some truth to them. Take a look. Here's their logo. Kind of interesting, right? But again, they've got secret handshakes. They've got rings. They've got all kinds of other nonsense so they can identify themselves, which all seems a little silly. For the most part, other than Richard Pryor, all these groups I've mentioned seem to be filled with a lot of rich white guys. But anyway, the Masons still exist today. I don't know that it's really a secret society per se, but there's thousands of Masonic temples across this country. And again, I believe they're somewhat linked, or their earliest beginnings are in the Knights Templar. Kind of interesting. Well, before we get to that one, the Cadaver Society, founded in 1957. This is probably the most secret society in my brief video here, because I could go on for days, and I know you don't want to hear that. But the Cadaver Society was founded in 1957, and it's the Washington Lee University in Lexington, Virginia. No one really knows who's a member. In 1988, though, they gave $150,000 to the school to help them refurbish some stuff. Take a look. Here's their logo. Pretty cool. Again, no one really knows. Some people argue that they're a pre-med group, or they might be part of the athletic club. But again, it's a bunch of rich kids. They're supposedly sort of famous for having these tunnels under Washington Lee University. You can look up online. They've got some pictures, some manholes that are locked, and I don't know, something in the library. There's some small door so they can move about freely within the campus. And supposedly at night they put on, Obi-Wan Kenobi robes and mask and run around and cause problems, which again sounds like a bunch of rich kids with nothing to do. But Cadaver Society, I lean more towards the pre-med students just because of the name Cadaver, not so much the athletics, but kind of interesting. Now, another group, not so much a society, founded in 1954, is called the Bilderberg Group or meeting. And in 1954, it was held at the Bilderberg Hotel in the Netherlands. And it's got about 120 to 150 folks that sort of attend, most of which are political leaders from around the world. People like Clinton, Margaret Thatcher, Henry Kissinger, Angela Merkel from Germany. She has attended these meetings, but they have them once a year. They get together and they talk about, I think originally it was more about how America could help influence Europe, and together they could influence the world. I think at one time in the 50s, it would have been called like Atlanticism, trying to get our philosophies and believe how the world should be run sort of around the world, which interesting and makes them somewhat secretive, and why I include them in this video is because their meeting minutes are never published. When you have a G7 summit and some of the other things that political leaders go to, what's discussed in the meeting minutes are published to reporters and things so we can find out what's going on. But the Bilderberg meeting, no. And it isn't all just political cats. It's some rich people, guys like the Rothschilds. I'm sure Gates. I'm sure, who's the guy from Kansas? Warren Buffett. I'm sure people like that have all gone to these meetings to try to impart some of their influence. Now the last and kind of the most fun, I suppose, I think it's the last one. Yeah, I think so. The Illuminati, 1776. This cat, his name was Adam. I'm going to butcher his last name because you're going to be shocked by this. He's a German. I think it's Weintop, Adam Weintop. Forgive me, I may be pronouncing that wrong. But 1776, Adam had grown tired of the doctrine of the Catholic Church and the Bavarian monarchy of the time, and he wanted to get illumination through reason. So he tried to pull together, interestingly enough, again, the Freemasons, a lot of Masons into his group, the Illuminati. And take a look at their logo. You'll be very familiar with this. Right? It's on every dollar bill. It's in every movie. It's the Illuminati are talked about in lots and lots of books. Again, it was sort of a rebuke of the church and their teachings, kind of going out, easy targets on some level. The story of Noah's Ark, everybody's like, oh, they got all these animals. Well, you got a couple of elephants. Each elephant eats like 600 pounds of crap a day. So if you got 2 elephants on this little boat, the hay or the food that an elephant eats alone for a year, it just doesn't make any sense. So all these guys are talking about this kind of stuff. Well, it pisses off this guy in Bavaria named Charles Theodore, who basically outlaws the Illuminati, and even mentioning or saying the name would be your death, which is where all communications supposedly begin in a cipher. You've all seen the movies where the writing backwards and forwards and using mirrors and all that kind of nonsense begins. And so they're sort of over even before they begin, though, in popular culture, the Illuminati still exist. And who knows, maybe they do, because maybe they really are a full-on secret society. Because again, no one really knows beyond that Adam Weishaupt guy if they even exist. Anyway, I don't really know. I've been doing some reading and I thought it was kind of interesting. There are a million different societies. I think of the group, the Hashashians, obviously assassins. I think the Knights Templar is probably the most interesting, and that the Cross of Lorraine, again, that's probably the most fascinating. I think the Knights Templar leading into the Freemasons. There's a ton of stuff you can read about it, and it is absolutely fascinating. Take out the books of fiction and stuff. Just the idea of how the banking system and how they were once, sort of part of the religion, and at some point religion turns against them, probably because they start to get too much power. And the one thing that no one likes to give up is power, especially those that have it. For those of us like myself who have none, I don't know what that's really about. But I think the Knights Templar and the Freemasons, maybe a little bit of the Illuminati, I suppose to some degree, but the Rosicrucianism, I said it right. I got it out of my mouth, look at that. And Golden Dawn, these are kind of the hoople heads of the bunch that sort of, that take it too far and get into that occultish, ritualistic, and lead you down some paths of, the occult, and doing goofy shit naked, and I don't know, cutting the heads off of goats and all that sort of nonsense, which sort of just takes it too far, and they become the wackadoodles of the bunch. A lot like, what's that religion that just left me? Tom Cruise is a part of it. It just goes a little too far for everybody. But anyway, I've gone on too long. I'm on my 4th, 5th, 6th glass of wine, so I'm feeling pretty good. I hope you got a kick out of this. Please dig into this a little bit More. Again, Freemasons, Knights Templar, Freemasons, the Illuminati, a couple others that I mentioned. Quite frankly, they're just clubs for rich kids. But I thought it was interesting. These are the not so secret societies. I hope you got a kick out of this. I did. I had fun doing this. Now I have to go lay down for a little while. But in this world, what's that, Sancho? Yeah, no, I'll go get us some food. Then I gotta lay on the couch. Maybe we'll watch Cruella. Anyway, in this world, when you could be anything you want to be, you be kind, you be humble, you be forgiving. That's probably most important. And you be melting snow. And as always, be yourself. Always be yourself. Well, unless you can be Batman. If you can be Batman, then be Batman. But for most of us, we're not Batman. So just be yourself. Besides that, everybody else is taken. Anyway, I've prattled on long enough. Crack a book, do some reading. The secret society shit's really interesting. I will talk to you later. Bye.